The internet has seen its fair share of toxic fan wars, but nothing quite prepared the comic book world for the absolute chaos that erupted when David Corenswet was announced as the new Superman. What started as a simple casting announcement has spiraled into one of the most vicious online battles in recent memory, with Henry Cavill loyalists declaring war on anyone who dares support the new Man of Steel. It all began with a devastating blow that no one saw coming. In December 2022, just 2 months after Henry Cavill triumphantly announced that Superman was back following his Black Adam cameo, the British actor dropped a bombshell that would shatter the dreams of millions of fans. The man who had embodied the last son of Krypton for nearly a decade was suddenly out, replaced by a relatively unknown actor who would face the wrath of an entire fandom. James Gunn and Peter Safran's takeover of DC Studios marked the beginning of what would become the most controversial reboot in superhero cinema history. Within weeks of their appointment, Cavill's next Superman movie was canceled, along with Wonder Woman 3 and the nearly completed Batgirl film. The message was clear: the old guard was being systematically erased. But it was the announcement of David Corenswet as Cavill's replacement that truly sent shockwaves through the fanbase. The 32-year-old actor, known primarily for his roles in Netflix's The Politician and Ryan Murphy's Hollywood, suddenly found himself thrust into the most scrutinized role in entertainment. What should have been the opportunity of a lifetime quickly became a nightmare, as Snyder fans launched an unprecedented campaign of harassment. The casting choice seemed almost deliberately provocative to Cavill's supporters. Here was an actor who had publicly criticized the dark, gritty approach that made Snyder's Superman trilogy so beloved among its dedicated fanbase. In a resurfaced 2019 Entertainment Weekly interview, Corenswet had specifically mentioned wanting to see somebody do an upbeat throwback take on Superman, adding that while he loved the Henry Cavill dark and gritty take, he would prefer the next one to be very bright and optimistic. The Snyder faithful saw this as nothing short of heresy. To them, Cavill's portrayal wasn't just another interpretation of Superman, it was the definitive version, and anyone attempting to replace him was committing sacrilege. The online harassment began almost immediately, with Corenswet becoming the target of death threats and organized campaign to sabotage his career before it even began. What made the situation even more explosive was the timing. Cavill's return in Black Adam had been met with thunderous applause from audiences, and his social media announcement about returning to the role had generated millions of likes and comments from ecstatic fans. The sudden reversal felt like a betrayal of the highest order, and someone needed to pay the price. The controversy reached fever pitch when details emerged about just how calculated Cavill's dismissal had been. According to industry insiders, Warner Bros. Had been planning to move on from Cavill long before Gunn and Safran officially took over. The studio had apparently approached Gunn about directing a Superman movie as early as 2021, with the explicit intention of recasting the role. This revelation only fueled the flames of fan outrage. Meanwhile, Corenswet tried to maintain a diplomatic stance, even going so far as to defend Snyder and Cavill's approach to the character. In a GQ interview, he praised the previous Superman films and acknowledged the passion of their fanbase. But this olive branch was rejected by fans who saw him as nothing more than a corporate puppet. The battle lines were drawn, and there would be no easy resolution to this conflict. What began as disappointed fans expressing their preferences quickly morphed into something far more sinister. The Snyder faithful, already organized and battle-tested from years of campaigning for the Snyderverse restoration, transformed their disappointment into a full-scale war against James Gunn's vision of Superman. The Restore the Snyderverse movement had already proven its power, successfully pressuring Warner Bros. To release the Snyder Cut of Justice League in 2021. Now, with their beloved Superman actor dismissed and replaced, they turned their considerable organizational skills toward a new target, ensuring that Gunn's Superman would fail spectacularly at the box office. The campaign was as coordinated as it was vicious. Snyder fans launched hashtags like Not My Superman and Henry Cavill's Superman, flooding social media with comparisons that inevitably painted Corenswet as an inferior pretender to Cavill's throne. Every piece of promotional material for the new film was met with waves of negative comments and downvotes. The harassment wasn't limited to online trolling. Corenswet revealed in interviews that he had received death threats and faced coordinated attempts to damage his reputation. The toxic behavior became so severe that even Henry Cavill himself was forced to intervene, sending letters of support to both Corenswet and Tyler Hoechlin, attempting to calm the situation. But the Snyder fans weren't interested in peace. They had tasted victory once before, and they believed they could achieve it again. Their goal was simple: make Gunn's Superman fail so catastrophically that Warner Bros. Would be forced to bring back Cavill and restore the Snyderverse. The movement gained momentum as more details about the new film emerged, each revelation providing fresh ammunition for their attacks. The controversy reached a new level when old promotional materials and interviews began circulating that seemed to show Corenswet actively criticizing the Snyder approach. While the actor had tried to be diplomatic in recent interviews, his earlier comments about wanting a bright and optimistic Superman were weaponized against him by fans who saw this as a direct attack on everything they loved about Cavill's portrayal. James Gunn, for his part, seemed unfazed by the backlash. In a Rolling Stone interview, he actually embraced the controversy, saying, "I don't mind it. I think it's good. I think you don't want to have everybody root for you." This dismissive attitude only further enraged the Snyder faithful, who saw it as proof that Gunn was deliberately antagonizing them. The situation became even more complex when it emerged that some of the harassment was being amplified by bot accounts and coordinated campaigns that went beyond simple fan disappointment. The toxic behavior was so extreme that it began to alienate even some legitimate Cavill supporters who wanted to see their favorite actor return but didn't approve of the harassment tactics. Things took an even darker turn when explicit footage of Corenswet from his 2018 indie film Affairs of State began circulating online. The nude scenes, which had been largely forgotten since the film's limited release, suddenly became a weapon in the culture war. Critics argued that the explicit content was inappropriate for someone portraying Superman, while others saw it as a desperate attempt to damage the actor's reputation. The controversy highlighted the double standard at play. While Cavill's own filmography included violent action films and mature content, his supporters seemed willing to overlook this while holding Corenswet to an impossible standard. The selective outrage revealed that this was never really about maintaining Superman's family-friendly image. It was about protecting their preferred interpretation of the character at any cost. As the harassment campaign intensified, it became clear that this wasn't just about two actors competing for the same role. This was a battle for the soul of Superman himself, with each side convinced that their vision represented the true essence of the character. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and neither side was willing to back down. While fans raged online about the injustice of Henry Cavill's departure, the truth behind his exit was far more calculated and cold-blooded than anyone wanted to admit. The narrative that Cavill had been cruelly dismissed by James Gunn was compelling, but it obscured a much darker reality about how Hollywood actually operates. The real story began long before Gunn and Peter Safran officially took control of DC Studios. According to industry insiders, Warner Bros. Had been planning to move away from Cavill's Superman as early as 2021, with the studio approaching Gunn about directing a Superman film well before he made the Suicide Squad. Even then, the intention was to recast the role with a younger actor who could anchor the franchise for the next decade. The brutal truth was that Cavill's age had become a liability in the eyes of studio executives. At 41, he was considered too old to launch a new cinematic universe that would require multiple films over many years. The decision to replace him had nothing to do with his performance and everything to do with cold business calculations about long-term franchise potential. But the studio's handling of the situation was spectacularly tone-deaf. Rather than being honest about their intentions, they allowed Cavill to believe he had a future as Superman, even encouraging his Black Adam cameo and subsequent social media announcement. This created a false sense of security that made his eventual dismissal feel like a betrayal to both the actor and his fans. The timing of Cavill's exit announcement was particularly cruel. Just 2 months after his triumphant return declaration, he was forced to post a humiliating Instagram message explaining that he wouldn't be returning to the role after all. The post, which attempted to maintain a gracious tone while delivering devastating news, only highlighted how poorly the situation had been managed. What made the situation even more tragic was Cavill's genuine love for the character. Unlike many actors who view superhero roles as simply lucrative gigs, Cavill had been a lifelong Superman fan who brought real passion to the part. His dedication to the role was evident in his physical transformation, his deep knowledge of the source material, and his willingness to endure years of uncertainty about the character's future. The actor's professionalism throughout the ordeal was remarkable. Despite being publicly humiliated by the studio's handling of his exit, Cavill maintained his dignity and even sent supportive letters to his replacement. His gracious response to the situation only made the studio's treatment of him appear even more callous. Meanwhile, the financial realities behind the decision were stark. Cavill's salary demands for future Superman films were reportedly in the 20 to 25 million range, a significant increase from his previous co-contracts. In contrast, Corenswet's initial deal was reportedly worth only 25 million range, a significant increase from his previous co-contracts. In contrast, Corenswet's initial deal was reportedly worth only 750 with the potential for bonuses based on box office performance. The cost savings were enormous, allowing the studio to invest more money in production values and marketing. The age factor became even more significant when considering the long-term plans for the DC universe. Gunn and Safran had mapped out a 10-year plan that would require the Superman actor to appear in multiple films across different franchises. Starting with a 41-year-old actor would mean he'd be in his 50s by the time the plan was complete, potentially limiting the character's physical capabilities and romantic storylines. Industry analysts also pointed to the mixed reception of Cavill's previous Superman films as a factor in the decision. While Man of Steel had been a modest success, Batman v Superman and Justice League had underperformed at the box office and received poor critical reviews. The studio may have seen the reboot as an opportunity to distance themselves from the controversial Snyder era entirely. The revelation that Cavill's dismissal had been planned for years, rather than being a sudden decision by Gunn, changed the entire narrative of the controversy. It wasn't about one director's vision versus another's. It was about corporate executives making calculated decisions about their intellectual property portfolio. The personal attacks on Gunn and Corenswet were misdirected rage at a system that treats beloved characters as mere commodities. This understanding of the real motivations behind the casting change would prove crucial as the fan war continued to escalate. The release of James Gunn's Superman has finally given fans the opportunity to see David Corenswet in action, and the early reactions have been nothing short of explosive. What emerged from the first screenings wasn't just a verdict on the new film, but a complete vindication of Corenswet's approach that has left Henry Cavill supporters scrambling to defend their position. The critical consensus has been overwhelmingly positive, with Corenswet's performance earning particular praise for bringing a lot of humor, humanity, and heart to the character. Reviewers have noted that his interpretation successfully captures the essence of Superman while feeling fresh and contemporary, exactly what the franchise needed after years of divisive films. Perhaps most significantly, audiences have responded enthusiastically to Corenswet's bright and optimistic take on the character. Social media has been flooded with positive reactions from fans who felt that previous Superman films had lost sight of what made the character special. One fan wrote on Twitter, "I loved all the others, but he is the most Superman. You feel me?" The physical comparison between the two actors has also shifted dramatically now that audiences have seen Corenswet in the costume. While Cavill's imposing physique had been considered the gold standard, Corenswet's 6'4" frame and more classical superhero proportions have won over many skeptics. The new Superman's flying sequences in particular have been praised for their elegance and grace, something that was often lacking in the more grounded Snyder films. But the most devastating blow to Cavill supporters has been the power comparison between the two portrayals. While Cavill's Superman was portrayed as nearly godlike in his abilities, facing off against Kryptonian warriors and holding his own against the entire Justice League, Corenswet's version has been praised for feeling more relatable and human. Critics have noted that this approach makes the character's struggles more compelling and his victories more satisfying. The box office performance has been equally impressive, with the film earning strong opening weekend numbers despite the organized boycott attempts by Snyder fans. The success has effectively neutralized the harassment campaign, proving that the vocal minority of critics didn't represent the broader audience's preferences. Industry insiders have been particularly impressed by Corenswet's handling of the pressure. Despite facing months of harassment and death threats, the actor has maintained his professionalism and delivered a performance that has silenced many of his critics. His interviews promoting the film have shown a deep understanding of the character and a genuine enthusiasm for the role that has won over even some former skeptics. The controversy has also highlighted the generational divide in Superman fandom. Older fans who grew up with Christopher Reeve's portrayal have largely embraced Corenswet's more traditional interpretation, while younger fans who were introduced to the character through the Snyder films have been more resistant to the change. This age gap has created interesting dynamics in online discussions, with different generations of fans arguing for their preferred version of the character. One of the most surprising developments has been the emergence of a new controversy surrounding Corenswet's nude scenes from his 2018 film Affairs of State. While some critics have argued that the explicit content is inappropriate for someone portraying Superman, the controversy has actually generated more interest in the new film rather than damaging Corenswet's reputation. The attempted scandal has backfired spectacularly, with many fans pointing out the hypocrisy of criticizing an actor for work done before he was cast as Superman. The cultural impact of the new film has extended beyond simple entertainment. Critics have noted that Corenswet's portrayal represents a return to the hopeful, inspirational Superman that many felt had been lost in recent years. The character's message of kindness and compassion has resonated particularly strongly in the current political climate, making the film feel both timely and timeless. As the dust settles on the initial release, it's becoming clear that Corenswet's Superman has successfully established itself as a legitimate successor to Cavill's portrayal. The fan war may continue, but the battle for critical and commercial success has been definitively won by the new Man of Steel. Which Superman do you think deserves the cape? Drop your hottest take in the comments below and let's settle this once and for all. But remember, the internet is watching.